If you're going to do any computer scripting, I highly recommend you get GitHub, or at least get Git. Why? 2 words for you: version control.
You also need to get familiar with the terminology of Git. And so let me step back. If you're like me, you might have thought, okay, well, GitHub, that's the thing where programmers put their fully published products out there, and then people can download and use that. And yes, it is that. And you can find all sorts of really cool stuff there, but it's also a lot more. This is in no way meant to be a tutorial. This is just me just discovering this and wanting to help share the knowledge that basically this exists. Basically, Git is this version control thingamabob. We're basically version control. So you can, when you're working on a project and then you make changes to the project and then you make other changes to the project and then you make other changes. Have you ever done that and then you realize that you made a change that you didn't really want to make? And then you're like, oh, what did I do before that I then messed up? And you want to go back to that part where you messed up. Version control makes it really easy to do that. So with Git, you can basically do this commit. So a commit is basically like a version. And so you make some sort of change and then you make a commit of it. So basically you say, okay, I made this change and here's this new version. Then on your computer, you will be able to compare versions, go back to older versions. You can even do like forks or branches where you can basically go from one and then branch out to another. And so you can start from the same point and then go 2 different directions. And this can be good if you have some basic underlying structure that then you want to take and apply to 2 different routes. You can then always compare versions. You can like merge versions. You can go back. And this is really great because now you have basically you keep track of all of the different changes, and so you know what you did if something made something not work, and you can go back to when it was working, or you can go back to something that you did before that you think would be helpful somewhere else. And so this is really, really helpful. And so Git is basically like the computer version of it. Like it's on your personal computer and only on your personal computer. You have these like repositories. So each repository is like a different project. And then within that, then you have different versions of it, different commits. So with GitHub, that's like a cloud-based service. And so your data, even though your data, like you're working with it on your own computer, the data you're making these commits, you're pushing the data to GitHub, and then GitHub is going to have that. But you can make it private, and you can share it. You can choose who you want to share it with. And so you can have collaborators. You could collaborate with people, and this is really helpful if you're sharing, trying to work back and forth to develop some sort of code. Maybe you're troubleshooting. This is for me, it's really helpful is that as I'm learning, I can then be sharing code with people who know a lot more than me in order to help me figure it out. But I don't want to just share it with anybody. So I don't have like public files, but I can then share them with collaborators. And so GitHub can be really helpful for that. You can have access it online on the GitHub website, as well as there's a desktop version. And so I just got introduced to it this morning, and I'm like super excited about this because I had been trying to write some simple code, nothing fancy, but I had like a bazillion different versions and I didn't have any sort of version control. I was just kind of like making copies of the files, and then everything was getting out of whack, and I realized, oh, what had I done before that I couldn't find now? And so with Git or with GitHub, you can then make this really, really easy. And so you can have the desktop is just like an extension of the GitHub. This is still GitHub, but it's still like using those like Git principles where you have those commits, you have the branches, and it's really, really cool. Another thing, so in terms of actually like using GitHub on the website. So you don't actually have to have a GitHub account in order to make use of GitHub. So even without an account, you can go and you can find all sorts of really cool programs that people have put out. And when you do, you'll see, okay, they have a lot of different programming languages. So you'll see some Python, C++, Java, you see some R, Go, some things I don't even know what are. Shell, often a combination of these. And there's a lot of cool stuff. There's like tutorials and training things, as well as various software programs. Here's a cool one from Brady Johnston on molecular nodes. So basically it tells you, okay, this provides a convenient method for importing structural biology files into Blender. So basically it's gonna help you make cool animations based off of like cryo-EM or crystallography data. So really cool stuff. And if you were to look in here, you see, okay, there's a bunch of these different files. You can download the code if you want to use it yourself. You can see here that there's these 4 branches. So I talked about branches before, how things could branch off. And so you can see there's some different branches here. And you can see that branches were merged. You can also compare the different versions. Here, I didn't change 2 things, but if I did, then you would see the different versions. Speaking of different versions, you can see that releases, that there have been different releases. And so these are like the different like public commits of this. And so if I wanted to, I could then compare these different ones and see what had changed. And this can be helpful. Other things, you pull requests or like issues. If you have realized that there's a bug with someone's software or whatever, you can put write an issue and let them know. Or if you have an idea, and then they can respond and they can fix things if needed, or etc. And yeah, so basically GitHub is really, really awesome. I'm just kind of discovering it. People have a lot more than just code on here. There's all sorts of cool like course content, various things, a lot of cool stuff. You can also watch if you want to know if there were changes made to it. You can then fork off of it, so they can make forks and you can make forks off of their things. And so yeah, so really cool stuff. And important, you can search for all sorts of different things. Importantly too, like this is what people want to make public. And so I'm sure that they have a ton of private stuff as well when they're trying to work on the different versions that then they commit to their public one. And you can have all of your stuff be private and still have this version control where you're able to see all of the different versions and go back. And so that's just a little bit about Git and GitHub and some of the terminology, because I was really confused before when I was like, what's a commit? But that's basically just, yeah, it's like a point that you can then go back to. And so it's really helpful. So you don't want to make too big of, like you want to make your commits frequently and also annotate what you did, what you changed. And this way you will not have to worry about not remembering what you changed that made something not work, or not remembering, oh, what was it that I really liked that thing before. And so by making these commits, you basically set these like checkpoints that you can then go back to these previous versions. And so yeah, so I'm still getting used to how you actually use it. There's like a quick start guide. You can do things in command line, you can do things in the desktop, in the website, various ways to do things. And